The release of the trailer for Dragon Age the Veilguard felt like a Guardians of the Thedas trailer instead of the dark fantasy vibes most people expect from a Dragon Age title. It's still mind-boggling to me how this trailer concept was approved. While the bones of it are exactly what Dragon Age has been doing for its trailer since the Marilyn Manson CGI trailer for Dragon Age Origins, maybe it's the nostalgia speaking, but I felt that trailer was more of a thematic fit to the universe. This trailer felt like in the last 10 years since Inquisition, BioWare truly lost the pulse on the community around the game. Now, the gameplay trailer that followed it gave a little bit more hope that the game hasn't abandoned its roots. Dragon Age Origins was one of my favorite games growing up, but I'll admit that the series just hasn't been doing it for me lately. Inquisition felt so grindy, and the combat just wasn't fun for me. So I brought in my wife Jess to talk about the gameplay trailer with me, since she's an even bigger Dragon Age fan than me, and has been replaying Inquisition for the umpteenth time now that the release for the Veilguard has been announced. Let's check it out. Alright, so Jess, this is the preview to the gameplay of Dragon Age the Veilguard, a game we have waited 10 years since Inquisition to play. So my question to you, after having seen the trailer and then after having been disappointed by the trailer and then watching this gameplay preview, what are your first thoughts? Because I know we were both pretty horrified by what the trailer was compared to what this gameplay preview was.
The gameplay trailer made me feel a lot better about the game. As you said, the cinematic trailer that they first decided to show, that BioWare first decided to show, was not the vibe that I was familiar with in terms of Dragon Age. It was very like the Marvel sort of humor and the wait, these things fly now?
They fly now. They fly now. 100% like the worst kind of like
but
writing.
This is like so much more close to what Dragon Age is, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I do feel like the vibes were a lot darker. The art style still is definitely not what I'm used to for Dragon Age, but not so far off that I feel like it's divorced from the source material.
It's definitely not what I'm used to, but I get what they're going for because a lot of people that I've been on the Twitter. I'm not going to call it what it's supposed to be called. I've been on the Twitter, and people have been talking about how if you try to do a hyper-realistic art style, that can generally age very poorly, but if you do more of like a stylized, cartoonish art style, that pretty much just like stays good no matter what. And I think that's what they were going for with this, and it's been growing on me a lot.
I will say, Dragon Age, it's the art style, realistic versus cartoonish, has never been the sticking point for me. I think it's been less like the style in particular, it's more the vibe that I think I was worried about when I saw the trailer, but I think the trailer has a different vibe than this gameplay has shown, so at least in terms of vibe, I think we're on the right track.
I agree with that. One thing I thought about after, once again, seeing other takes on the Twitter, people thinking about how like, traditionally Varric has been the storyteller of Dragon Age.
Let him rest.
Well, the thing is, he always has been the storyteller, like, since DA2, so the fact that the trailer was so, like, silly could easily be written off as, oh, this is Varric telling his little story, because you know how he loves to be thematic and make up shit and like over dramatize.
Thank
you, over dramatize things.
Yeah, but it doesn't look like they're doing the same gameplay device as they were doing in Dragon Age 2, where it was Varric telling his story. It looks like we are in media res. We're jumping in right as the actual action is happening.
Right, but trailers are different from DA2. And pointing out right here where they're doing the dialogue options, this is 100% taken from DA2.
It 100% is. It does seem like this game is fully trying to do what DA2 did, which on release, that game was not received very well. Like,
which sucks, because that game has some of the best characters and the best stories, but I will agree the battle in the gameplay kind of sucked.
I think the problem was budget. Like, it just recycled too much, too often throughout that game, where it's like, oh, this is a great map. Oh, wait, I have to do the same map 4 times, and you're just going to keep
Yeah.
throwing enemies at me in waves rather than them being on the battlefield to start with.
Yeah, the wave thing really, like, is my least favorite thing about DA2.
It made it feel very arcadey and not very tactical, because you couldn't, like, go into a battle being like, okay, here's what my plan is, because you knew that, like, 3 more waves are coming, so you couldn't really plan. I think that was my main problem with DA2's combat, though story-wise, I really don't have very many notes, because I thought the story was excellent.
Yeah,
And-
the story was great.
And I think the people have talked about how, or one of the developers mentioned that how this game is going to be less DA Inquisition, where it's going to be less open areas and more mission-based, which I think scared people at the start, but I think is actually maybe a point in this game's favor, in that even Origins was very mission-based, and Mass Effect has always been very mission-based.
The scene that just happened right now is like, this is DA2, but they just made it better.
Yeah,
Like you're fighting in the streets of a city.
I think I agree with that, and that's I think the main thing I'm wondering about. But if we're looking at this, and again, this is level 1, so it's not going to be that tactically interesting. In a world where we have games that have interesting combat, I worry that this combat is going to be at max serviceable and not interesting.
Well, what for you is interesting combat, I
So,
guess is my question then.
I have 2 things here, because people said this game was going to be God of War. That was kind of the rumor, right? And I mostly watched you play God of War. So if you were to
yeah,
compare this
because
game,
I'm a master gamer.
you're the master gamer and I am a
I
mere
beat
pleb.
Elden Ring, killed Millennia.
Yes, so you having the cred of being this gamer with a capital G, I want you to tell me, looking at this combat, having beaten Millennia in open combat, this doesn't seem to measure up to Elden Ring, obviously, and it doesn't seem to even have the punch of God of War. So, and it doesn't have the tactics of Baldur's Gate. So if we're putting all
I
of
think
those
that's
together,
a lot to conclude from just looking at
like
the
level
intro
1
of the game.
and that's totally fair, but you're the one with I think the most experience between the two of us here. So like looking at this, we just watched him, the main character Rook, dodge out of the way of some magic.
Yeah, you can dodge and roll. That's a massive improvement over the other DA games.
I would say, yeah, in Inquisition there didn't seem like to be a way to avoid taking damage.
No.
Like,
You can like disengage and run kind of, but people can still hit you.
which I think that brings it towards the like Darksiders, towards the like the way where we're moving towards an action RPG rather than like the classic RPG that I feel like the last games have been.
Well, DA Origins was.
DA Origins was. But I even in Inquisition, where it sort of had the tapestry of being an action RPG, like there wasn't really ways to avoid taking damage beyond the sort of like, oh, there's a red circle on the ground, get out of that red circle on the ground. But like if a mage cast a spell on you, it just hit you. Like the cantrips, they just hit. At least that was my interpretation of Inquisition.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was saying. This is a massive improvement because you can dodge, you can roll. There seems to be some sort of like tactical movement in the game.
Mm-hmm. And now here's my big question, like moving away from just like the combat, we're about to hit a section in this gameplay trailer where we're going to do a little bit more of the role play of the actual decision making, which I think if there's a draw to coming back to Dragon Age, it never really is the combat. It's going to be the characters. It's going to be the story.
It's always the story.
Exactly.
Everything about BioWare is about the story and the characters.
I mean, that's the problem. It's like everyone's going to be talking about like, oh, we're moving away from one level of combat to another level of combat. Obviously, I prefer like anything being as close to as possible to like Baldur's Gate. That is my vibe for combat. Or if you're going to get really close to Elden Ring, like that's also my vibe for combat. But right here, we're obviously going to be hitting the actual draw of Dragon Age, which is going to be character-focused gameplay. And in my opinion, like looking at all of the characters so far, I am hopeful because I think that they have an interesting cast. I was really unhopeful after that trailer because it seemed like everyone is Guardians of the Galaxy-ified. But what are your thoughts?
I mean, looking at the trailer, not the cinematic trailer, but the gameplay trailer, I felt much less like everything was Guardians of the Galaxy vibes.
Yeah. We are getting to a point here where Varric is going to confront Solus about the Fade. And originally this game felt very Lord of the Rings. Like Dragon Age as a property felt very Lord of the Rings of like let's defeat the orcs that are invading, with a mix of like Game of Thronesy. There's some like politics going on between Kaelin and Loghain, and it seemed like the whole point of Dragon Age Origins was like a balancing act of politics with fighting an inexorable force. Since then, I feel like Dragon Age has moved away from that into a sort of like social politic of like what people's rights are.
Oh, absolutely, it's moved into social politics. Like, there was a whole quest in DA Inquisition that was about going to a ball.
Yes, and I think that's amazing. The thing about that, though, is, like, social politic is where I'm almost thinking about, like, mage rights versus, like, Templars, and in that's almost even more political. The ball seemed to have, like, a huge amount.
That was, like, way back in DA Origins.
Right.
Now we're talking about, like, a world existential crisis because the Fate is being ripped open.
But the Blight is also an existential crisis.
Yeah, but there's no Blight on the horizon. That's why they're not focusing on it.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Like, I know you love the Blight.
I love the Blight. Sorry to let everyone know. I love the Blight, and I want them to keep bringing back the Blight. But I know that Corypheus is supposed to be, like, the OG Darkspawn, and who's kind of set this ball in motion here with Solus and the Fade. But maybe for somebody who hasn't played Trespasser, played Dragon Age Inquisition...
He wasn't an OG Darkspawn. He was a Tevinter Magister that was, like, obsessed with power.
But wasn't that, like, the whole deal, is that those Tevinter Magisters went into, like...
That might be true.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, your confusion on that point, and maybe mine too, is kind of emblematic of the point that this plot has gotten pretty complex.
Also, I didn't really care about Corypheus as an enemy.
That's
full
also
disclosure.
That's exactly what I mean, though. It's like it felt so like you never forgot about Loghain in Origins, right? Like he was always like on the horizon. And in Inquisition, they hid Corypheus from you until like the end of Act 1. And then even after Act 1, when he kind of shows up and blows up Haven, you still don't really care about him.
Because mostly at that point, you're fighting, like, the Red Templars.
Yeah, and it's like,
such.
Yeah, Corypheus did that, but, like, who cares at that point? I don't know. Because I know you know about him at the end of Dragon Age 2's DLC. If I'm going to be honest with the audience here, I think Corypheus shouldn't have been the bad guy. I think it should have been the Architect if you played Dragon Age Origins.
Well... Also, to be fair, Corypheus has one of the hardest lines of all time in Dragon Age Inquisition.
Hit me.
Where he says, I'm not going to get the exact quote right, but he says that he has gone to heaven and he's seen the throne of the gods and they are empty. So you should hope that he succeeds.
Oh my gosh,
It's the hardest line ever, and I didn't say it right, but it's so good.
It's the most edgelord line, I'll give you that.
It's so good.
I feel like Corypheus and Solus are two sides of the same coin in terms of their edgelord vibes.
Well, yeah.
With this here, though, Solus being the Dreadwolf, having to try and like destroy the Fade, which he put into place. I think the issue here, in terms of like coming into it as maybe a new player, is maybe losing the connection to like why you should give a fuck.
So the way that they're kind of dealing with that in this game, from my understanding, is, as you see in this gameplay trailer, which will be coming up after they preview this boss fight for us, Solus isn't the main bad guy in this game.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's probably they moved it away from the Dreadwolf,
He fails
right?
very early on in what he's trying to do, and he releases 2 elven gods in the process. So Solus isn't the main bad guy. We're focusing on different players here, so it really doesn't matter if you've played the previous games, because you'll get all that lore through exposition. And these 2 main bad guys, nobody knows who they are yet, as far as I know. Like I said, I've been on the Twitters. Nobody knows yet. There's speculation, but we'll see how it all shakes out. So you really don't need that background knowledge, and they're gonna put not like the Dragon Age Keep, but they're gonna do something kind of like Mass Effect 3, where they let you like choose your decisions from the previous games before you start this game, rather than like importing a character.
As both you and I grew up, at least like, you know, middle school on with Dragon Age Origins and Dragon Age as a game. One of the first things I saw you doing when we first met was you were playing Dragon Age Inquisition on your laptop.
I showed it off on my gaming laptop because I thought you would think it was cool, and I was right. And then we started dating.
I did think it was cool, and that is what first drew my attention to you, Jess. No, you were very cute, and that was just icing on the cake. But having that background of like Dragon Age means a lot to the pair of us. Looking at this, like what they have on display, both in terms of gameplay and plot, what does it do for you in terms of like, is this what you wanted 10 years on from Inquisition, this game to be?
I think so. It's not necessarily 100% what I expected. I was expecting Solus to be the main villain, which they had teased with the previous title for the game, which was Dragon Age Dreadwolf.
Right.
And then they changed the name to the Veilguard, which I'm a little less stoked about, but I get what they're going for with it, especially because they moved away from Solus being the main villain. Very sad to see Varric so old.
No, he's definitely getting on.
He's graying.
They finally gave him a beard.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I don't know how old the dwarves get in Dragon Age. They get pretty old.
Yeah, I think I remember this is supposed to be 9 or 10 years after the events of Inquisition.
Yeah, they just wanted to give you like, oh, he's sexier now.
Oh yeah, he's a daddy.
Exactly. I don't think he's like, oh, he's got one foot in the grave.
No, it's not that he's 1 foot in the grave. I'm just like, oh, my sweet boy, he's gray now.
Mm-hmm. Do you think we're gonna see the Inquisitor in this one?
Yes, because they let you customize your Inquisitor before you start the game.
Ooh.
So they're definitely going to show up. I don't know how big of a role they're going to play.
No.
I don't know if it's going to be like super minor role, kind of like they did with Hawk in Dragon Age Inquisition, where they just show up for like a quest. If I have to choose whether or not to kill my Inquisitor over somebody else in this game, I'm gonna riot.
But the thing is, like, the Inquisitor, like, Hawk could still also be alive, so they could technically have Hawk show up again, too.
That's true.
Which would be definitely something.
I wish they would bring my Warden back. I miss my Warden.
I know, I was thinking the same thing. I feel like they can't at this point.
Probably not.
Because it's like, if they could bring your Warden back, you'd have to do another customization thing, but it's been, like, several decades since your Warden was a thing.
Your Warden would be old as hell.
And your Warden may have even heard the calling and had to go kill themselves on the deep roads at that point. Plot depending. And this is where Solus is doing his horrible mistakes that he loves to make.
This man is so incompetent. He can't do anything right.
No, he never can. Like, he created the Fade, and that seemed to fuck everything up. And now he's trying to destroy the Fade, and it also fucks everything up. What an egg.
What an egg. And he just, like, all of his plans are based on such flimsy logic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the fact that... I'm getting ahead of myself, I'm sorry. I've seen this before. But the fact that your main character, Rook, can go over and break the scaffolding and just ruin Solus's whole thing.
Don't worry, I have plans to protect this. Oh no, my plans!
Oh no!
The scaffolding my whole plan's depended on.
Just one little guy comes over and knocks these boards over and breaks my whole thing.
Shoot, dang, wow.
Also, I was telling Ben about this. I really like that they're kind of implementing some of the mechanics of Mass Effect 3 that worked really well, which are like choosing which companion to take with you for like certain missions and which ones to leave behind. It gave me really big Mass Effect 3 vibes, and I enjoyed it.
And I would say I'm one of the biggest Mass Effect 3 fans. I know a lot of
people... Well, other than me.
Well, you and I both are huge Mass Effect 3 fans, but I know a lot of people in the community didn't like that game, but I think most people are just
and they can suck eggs.
Well, they were hung up on the ending, and, like, the fact is, like, the ending changed because of the DLC, the free LC, and so it's like you may have experienced a different ending than other people experienced at that point, or you may have a different interpretation, or maybe you're a indoctrination theory purist. Regardless, I think the rest of the game holds up outside of the last like hour and a half of Mass Effect 3.
Did I tell you about how I had one playthrough where I just decided to shoot the kid at the end?
It's the correct choice.
It's so funny.
It ends so bad.
It's such a bad ending,
it's
but
such a bad
so
ending.
satisfying.
I gotta hand it to you. Sometimes it's worth it to shoot the kid, even though it's a terrible ending. But yeah, no, we're about to like see this sort of like anticlimactic climax here where you just attack a wood piece 4 times and then the scaffolding comes down and then a cutscene happens. Like, obviously...
And then Solus is like, oh, no, my plans!
My plans! Obviously, like, this isn't meant to be a challenge. The challenge was the Pride demon beforehand. But it's like, at that point, why did you need to choose which character you're bringing with you? Maybe there's something that
Well,
happens.
you don't know what happens after the cutscene ends, Ben.
That's a good point. There's probably a reason that you get separated, I'm sure. But yeah, this is...
But also, going back to Mass Effect 3, sometimes it didn't matter which one you brought with you, it's just which powers you wanted to have with you if you're, like, attacking enemies.
Yeah.
So it might not narratively matter.
Yeah, if there's one thing I want to hope from this game, like, it is that, like, the story and the characters are what people want from Dragon Age. Like, that, I think, is the one thing that they haven't fucked up in any of the Dragon Age games, is the characters being good.
Aside from some characters.
Yeah, like Sarah in Dragon Age Inquisition, and Sten, Jacob. There's been a few stinkers here and there, but like as a whole, there's always characters to come back to that you were like, I want to play this game just so I can romance this character, befriend this character.
Garrus.
And Garrus carries. We're seeing the end. These 2 elven gods.
These are the 2 actual enemies in the game, not Solus. No one gives a shit about Solus anymore.
Why they changed the name. All right. Well, that is going to do it for us here. Thank you for hanging out.